You are now listening to the Lancescurv Show, the boldest spot on internet radio.
To ask Brother Akbar, what is his feelings about this new issue that has taken the country by storm in the last 7 days?
Well, there's 2 points I'd like to make, and thank you very much for that question. It's a current challenge. I'm not on the same page that they are because I happen to know the history of America and her interference in governments and so-called democracies all over the world for her own objective. And what you have now is it's coming back home to America. And if it is true, but there's questions that we have to fundamentally ask. How did the Russians directly impact how people would vote in the voting booth? Did they change the votes? I mean, there's a lot of details, a lot of technical questions that would have to be asked and answered. And I also think that it's a tall step to accuse the president of a country of being directly involved in directing it in terms of interfering with the election in America, saying that the president wanted to see Trump as president. And when you unfold it and look at it, it may look like sour grapes. It may look like the pain, because nobody, including those who were very close to it, expected Donald Trump to win. I think even he was surprised. You could see it. And so, but when he did win, it became a problem, and this interference became like a convenience to blame the Russians. So what do they want us to do? Have the election again? Are they going to attack Russia? And when Elijah comments, I'd like to have a conversation that this tears at the very base of democracy. It's a threat to our democracy. Well, when we go around the world, I can start as recent as the last election in Iran. America was heavily involved. I can look at the situation in Libya. America supported those who were against Muammar Gaddafi. They were housed in America. One of the top leaders who was against Gaddafi lived right there in Alabama and was supported by the CIA. And I can go on and on and on. So what you have done to others, now it comes home to you, and now you're talking about, even some people talking about attacking Russia over this, and I don't see it that way. I think they need to look into it, show how they interfered with the election, even the count, and maybe they're thinking that we should have the election all over again. But to me, I don't think that it's what they're making it to be, because and with all of my political knowledge, it may not be that great, but to accuse a president, I haven't heard presidents around the world accusing America of interfering in their democracy. And the same thing with the phone call between Taiwan and the President-elect Trump. People could say that he was interfering in that phone call with a country that is challenging their mother country, China, to be independent and not be recognized as a part of China, but an independent country. And here America makes a call to the leader of that country. So no, I'm on a different page on that. And what it is, it's a wait and see. Whatever is there, I believe that it will unfold. And it's unfortunate that this pressure is on Barack Obama as he's leaving office. If he talked to the president of Russia, as he said he did in the G8 meeting, then whatever came out, he knows what came out of the discussion. It was more than don't do that, and I'm warning you, but there was more discussion than that. And maybe we need some transparency and talk about the full discussion. So that's my take on that. I know I took the scenic route.
No, it's beautiful, but Brother Akbar, how do you handle the question that many would say that America, the greatest democracy on the face of the earth, has a burden to spread democracy by any means necessary to all the unfortunate nations in the world?
Well, I would say that that is totally a misstatement by America if they're saying it. You have the responsibility to use your tremendous wealth and power to see that there's no hunger, to see that the people in Syria who need to get out of that area of Aleppo, that they get out, that you send in helicopters and food so that they can get out. They have lost their fight against Bashar al-Assad, and now if they want to leave, America should spend their time leaving. America should help in the crisis in the southern Sudan. You engineered the separation, now the country's in free fall. So if you want to talk about spreading democracy, use your wealth and power to spread some goodwill and help those who are in need right now.
Another issue is the President-elect Trump. We have a number of African Americans who are almost in depression, especially the so-called black leadership class, trying to find a way to handle this new era that's come upon us with Donald Trump. And how do you think we should handle this? We know that Mr. Al Sharpton is going to have a march in a couple of days. We have again heard people like Cummings and others talk about, oh wow, we have to do something to find a way to stop this momentum and movement by Trump. Do you think that we should be in that mix?
Okay, no, I don't think we should. I think that what the better thing, instead of marching, what is your agenda for President to be Trump on January 20th, God willing? What is your agenda? What do our people feel about him and how he views black people in America? That's what we should be talking to our people about. To me, what are we marching for? We're saying we're protesting you being the president. We're protesting because we somewhere down in our minds and hearts we feel that you're racist and you'll mistreat us. So what are we marching for? Or do we present an agenda for Trump that we need to satisfy some of the terrible situations that we find ourselves in as a people in America with nearly 45 million? So I don't see that. I don't see what the march will get. And if you're going to have a march and you want this to be inclusive of all of your people, then you have to make it inclusive. The churches, the mosques, wherever we may be found, we have to make it inclusive and explain to the people what is the agenda in terms of dealing with Trump for the next 4 years.
Yes. Well, last week, President-elect Trump met with such people like Jim Brown, and we know Jim Brown, who has been a friend of the Black Liberation Movement for a long time. And he walked away from the meeting saying that, oh, Mr. Trump, he seems to be honest, that he felt good about him. What do you think about Jim Brown's analysis on Trump and also the fact that while Trump is calling black leadership, they have omitted one of the strongest black leaders in this country, and that's Minister Louis Farrakhan?
That's what I meant about being inclusive. I'm a member of the Nation of Islam, a helper of Minister Farrakhan. I'm one of his followers. And to see them talk about meeting with black people and talking about agendas and excluding Minister Farrakhan, then you should say that the meeting is not legitimate. He's the strongest voice in the black community for the hurt of our people. And he's the stand-up person to those who inflict pain on our people. But you're going to have a meeting with the new leadership of America that you call, whether he accepted to come or not, but just an invitation would show that your heart and mind is in the right place and that you're really speaking for black people. So I think that them to call a meeting, and to my knowledge, Minister Farrakhan did not receive an invitation, is a misstep in terms of dealing with Trump and this administration that's coming in.
That's very interesting. Also, what is also on the agenda is the whole issue of the recent death of Fidel Castro. As we know, the American political scene, from CNN to MSNBC or Fox, they had disparaging remarks about Fidel Castro, making him a demagogue, an evil person. We as people of African descent, do you think that we should follow the same line, that Fidel Castro was an enemy to the people or enemy to the freedom and justice and the rise of black people throughout the world?
Well, absolutely not follow the same line. And the problem is the lack of knowledge among our people. And if you look at the way Fidel Castro was hailed by people in every corner of the world, and mainly the oppressed nations. I didn't see him hailed across Europe, but throughout Africa, throughout Latin America, throughout India and the Far East, people hailed Fidel Castro because he took a principled position and stood on it in the face of all of those who would have liked to see him destroyed. When the Soviet Union had their problems in the early 80s, Fidel and Cuba stood. They didn't change their course, they held their position. When Fidel began to turn out these doctors through his medical schools, he sent them throughout the world to help those countries that the Western nations that conquered most of them could have sent doctors and built hospitals and helped with schools and spent millions of dollars in those countries where they took out billions of dollars to help the people. But Fidel did it, they did not. So of course, unless you're empty-headed and just don't know anything about history, then you would take a position against Fidel with your former slave masters.
I was very, very sad and shocked that Congressman Ellis, on his statement in reference to Fidel Castro, first thing that came out of his mouth is that now, quote, now we can enact a real human rights policy within Cuba since Fidel Castro is dead. And I was shocked by him because he typically lines himself up as a fighter for the oppressed, a fighter for the poor. But him having those types of statements, what is it when we have leaders like that, congressmen, senators, ministers who are African American and African descent, begin to voice a language that is contrary to the will and the wishes of the people? What do we do about that?
I think they're suffering from an identity crisis. Mm-hmm. They got lost somewhere. They lost their way. And they're so much trying to be American, I should say, and in the absence of the color line. 3 books just came out recently. People are writing about the challenge that we have as black people in America. And if you see somebody speaking up for the oppression, we are the oppressed. We may be making a little more money and we may have one extra car, but we come from the oppressed class. But when you speak up for the ruling class, I mean, how could you speak up for America and Cuba and what America has done to Cuba since Fidel came to power in 1959, tried to strangle that country and its people, and you speaking up for them that we can now have human rights in Cuba, and you don't even have your human rights here at home. You suffering here at home for the lack of human rights and dignity and the freedom to move and to do things for your people. No, they need an awakening. And that's why the Congressional Black Caucus, unless they get some strong leaders in there who can help them to stand firmly on issues and stop buckling and trying to please the establishment people, then we're always going to have a problem. Yeah, I'm surprised at it. I would think that somebody like him, who have all of that seniority in the Congress, is over one of the most powerful committees in the Congress, would stand up. But if he's trying to say things that pleases others, then he can't speak directly to the problems that we face as a people in America and those outside of America who champion our cause, such as Fidel Castro.
Maybe Ellis and others are being pushed by the outside forces of pushing an agenda. For example, not long ago, there was a wonderful article that was in the Al Jazeera website, and it talked about the racial problems that we have within the Islamic community in the United States. And that is, we know that recently, or not recently, but the last several years, when it comes down to issues of Islam and political Islam, the Nation of Islam and Muslims of African descent has been pushed to the side. And this article talked about how immigrant Muslims and Arab Muslims have a racial problem. Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but what do you think about this? And therefore, that's causing our community and causing people like Ellis, who is a Muslim, to take on a perspective that they have to be dismissive to anything that is proactive radically proactive, black and proactive to black Islam?
Well, there's two things. The infectious disease of white supremacy has polluted the water of all of the immigrants that come to this country and who don't have black skin like our black skin. We have all shades. It runs the gamut. And it's actually polluted. And they begin to shape their thinking when it comes to us from our former slave masters who were the rulers of this country. And so you have that problem. But you also have the problem, we have two Muslim congressmen, and both of them came through the experience of the Nation of Islam. Carson in Indianapolis, and Keith Ellis in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So they're Muslims, they're congressmen, and their birth into consciousness and their knowledge of Islam came through the Nation of Islam that both of them belonged to. And because you walked over that bridge, you should be strong enough not to think you have to denounce the Nation of Islam or Minister Louis Farrakhan because your former slave masters don't like him. That I see as a position of weakness. And then the Arab Muslims in this country see the black men and women who love Islam, want to be involved in Islam, but they want us to keep a distance from us because they think that their closeness to us may displease the former slave master who was over us or people in government. So they keep an arm's distance. They give us a stiff handshake and not get too close to us nor into our challenges, our problems, solving some of the issues that we have in the black community. They don't want to get too close because that may not fare well with the white rulers of this country.
Yes. Last thing I want to make mention of is that, and that is, members of the Nation of Islam by the hundreds and by the thousands have made Hajj and has made Umrah. And when they go over there, no one asks them what type of Islam do they practice or if they're Muslim or not. They allow all people to go in. Am I right, Brother Akbar?
You're absolutely
all right.
right.
And that needs to be said and understood. And only people within the United States, whites and some unfortunate African Americans, ask the question or make the statement, so-and-so is not a true Muslim. And that's something that should not be asked or stated. I want to thank you, Brother Akbar, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Let our listening audience know that he was just traveling through. He had no ideas and no intentions of stopping by a radio station to talk. But this is a man who is much like Nelson Mandela, like Gaddafi, like a Minister Farrakhan, a Minister Malcolm, Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Paul Robeson, and others, that when there's a call that goes out for them to say something and to speak to our people and speak to the hurt and despair and try to offer solutions, there's nothing that they will not do. They will stop whatever they're doing to come to address us, because as I know this man, Akbar Muhammad, he lives for black people. He loves black people. He has put his family behind for black people. So we thank you for coming out. We thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, and we thank you for listening to the Lancescurv radio show. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you.
Make sure to check out the boldest blog at Lancescurv.com and follow Scurv on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube under Lancescurv.